Hey Monty, let's take a look at your week 1 assignment 4 cubes here. Both of the cubes, they're being rendered well. Perspective looks good. The underlying drawing that you have in place for both of them feels very good, very strong. And I think you have the basic kind of gist of the aim for this assignment when creating different values for different sides of the cubes. But I think in both cases you could be more aggressive. I think that with the marker value, this could be considerably darker than what you have, and this could be considerably darker, but not as dark, obviously. And then that way you would have 3 very distinct sides to the cube. I think for me right now, I'm feeling like these two are very similar to each other, and this is the one that's distinct from the other two. But that means you have one side that that needs to be pushed. And generally what that means is if you're going to push this one to a darker value, that means you have to kind of push this one to a darker value as well. What that means in real world, I guess, is that if you're using like a 40% gray for this side, I'd use a 60. And if you're using a 60, I don't think this is a 60, but if you are, then you're going to be wanting to use an 80. But an 80 is very... you could use an 80, and that means you'd be wanting to use a 40 or a 60 for this side and just leaving this guy alone. The darker these sides get, the lighter this is going to look. So, take that for what you will, but I think you could be a little more dramatic with that part of the shading. I think the same could be said for the colored pencil, but it mostly just focuses on this side. I thought you did a good job with the white on the top. You use the marker base as the middle tone, and so for the darker value, I think this is kind of a nice color change. I think you could go over top of what you have right now and with a little bit of a black, or if you have like a really dark blue, go over top of this with a really dark blue, and I think you'll get a more substantial value change than what you have right now. I think, again, what I get the feeling is that these two sides are just a little bit too similar to each other, and I'd almost like to see more of a dramatic change occurring, between them. I think coverage also could use a little bit of a little more work, a little more consistency. We're seeing mark making occurring. There's lighter values, there's darker values. It doesn't feel like a blind to me, and it doesn't feel like a side to side to me. It kind of feels like something in between. And if it's a side to side, it just needs more saturation. And if it's a blind, you have to be much more kind of consistent with the stroke and just be very kind of systematic with it as you're making your way through kind of the coverage. I think the other thing you can do with the stroke is, with the blind, if you're working with a blind, is move the stroke in the direction that the plane of the cube is going, and that way you kind of get that kind of separation with it as well. There will be different directions for each side, which can help. But if it's a side to side, I think you just need to saturate more. It just doesn't feel like it's quite as even as it needs to be. The edging is good, though. You're really kind of reducing the amount of areas that feel like there's kind of breakage beyond the drawing that you've made, and in most cases you've got really nice pointed corners, sharp corners, and clean razor sharp edges, which is what we want. So that aspect I would definitely just kind of keep up, but don't be afraid to push things a little further than what you have. Again, I still think you have like the basics down and the general idea down, and I think that's really at this point what we want. And I think from this point forward, you're gonna just want to be playing around with it, refining it, and seeing if you can build on what you have and just kind of improve as you work from assignment to assignment.